What is going on, everybody? Happy Thursday night football. We got a little bit of an early barn burner, huh? Between Pittsburgh and Cleveland. I thought we were kind of going into a 10-7 ball game here, but we're already got 14 points through the first, basically. Patrick says George Pickens catch of the year. I actually did not watch it yet. I was busy getting set up for tonight. I went for the double monitor action, got the HDMI splitters. Basically realized that I can't get the double monitors with just the HDMI. So there we go. Yeah, Weisberg. I don't have the I don't have the official Power Hour intro yet. I'm sure that's coming. I'm sure that's high on the team hold list. But here we go. We are gonna get this kicked off. Just to give a let's give a quick rundown, real quick, of the. Oh, I gotta close my door. 1 second. Let me be a professional here. All right, so let's do a quick rundown of the Thursday night challenge as it stands right now. So we're going with the player with the most receptions, which right now would be Amari Cooper. Then we need. Oh shoot, I'm on the wrong one. I'm on the wrong one. Hold on. This is last week's. Okay. Player. Oh, it's still a player with the most receptions, Amari Cooper. And then a player with the longest run, which we got Najee Harris at 10 yards, Chubb 36 yarder. So Chubb's leading that one pretty heavy. Then we got a player with the most tackles, who I know Miles Garrett's in the running. He's got one. Denzel Ward's got two. Where's our guy Fitzpatrick? He's got one. Cam Hayward's got two. So he was a rare that was going to give Fitzpatrick a run for his money, and Edmonds has one. So it's really anybody's ball game right now. Just a couple tackles out there. So we'll keep kind of tuned in here to Thursday night football. You guys in the chat, I couldn't get all my stuff up and at it. So if you want to, keep me posted. Keep me posted if there's any crazy highlights we got to get to. But we had got a lot to get into here tonight. So I want to share the screen here, and how we're going to do this. I did this a couple times last year, and basically, I put together this workload report, which you can kind of see on the screen right now. This is part of the Momentum Labs subscription. We can see our guy DJ Local, I think, is in the sheets here. That's his alien. So he's checking out the data right now. And basically, what the workload report does is it's broken into three sections. We've got opportunity, which is basically snaps, targets, attempts, and then I create a couple metrics called involvement and usage. And because fantasy production starts kind of with the opportunity. How many times are these guys seeing a potential to get some points? Then we've got the production side of things, right? So the rushing yards per game, the rushing share, receiving yards, some of the more advanced receiving stats like ADOT, air yards, racer, whopper. We'll get into all those. Then I kind of do like a dominator rating, which is basically just like how much of a share of their team's fantasy production did they have that week. And then we look at like the results, right? Because all this stuff is good and dandy, but if they're not scoring points, then that's really not helping us out on the roster side of things. So it looks like a lot of data, and it is for sure. Basically, how this works is, right now we've only got 2 weeks of data to look at. So I've got week two, and we're comparing to week one. Typically, as we keep going, this is going to be the last like 3 to 4 weeks of rolling data. And then we're going to look at the games that just happened that last week. And if that tells us anything about, how these players are trending, where that game stood out compared to what they've been doing the last few weeks, and things kind of like that. So yeah, I think we're gonna dive into it. I'm stoked that 20 people are here ready to nerd out with me on some football. I think it's gonna be pretty fun. We're gonna go game by game. We're gonna take a look at what the workload report is telling us, and then also dig into some DraftKings action too, and just look at the kind of early projections for DraftKings for the week, and what that's kind of what if we're leaning anywhere there. So yeah, let's kind of get rolling here. We're gonna start with we're gonna start with the lowest games on the slate, right? So we're gonna save kind of the big ones for last. We're gonna start with the lowest totals, maybe the ones that we don't care about as much, and then we're gonna kind of get going here. Looks like Njoku with a touchdown score. You gotta love to see that. I've got a lot of Njoku in my best ball bags. That's great. And Weisberg says he's tied for the reception lead. That's pretty huge. I did grab a Njoku before the game here. I think he was like 15 or 18 bucks or something. Kind of an easy bet there. I am hoping my Cam Hayward sells soon. I did buy a Cam Hayward. I was just hoping to flip him if he got out to a tackle lead, and I think he kind of is right now. So maybe that thing will sell soon. All right, but here we go. First one on the docket for tonight is Texans on the road at the Bears. We've got Chicago, surprisingly, favored by 2.5 here, and the over under is just 40. I think it was actually dipping into 39 earlier today. So we'll start with kind of the running back usage on both teams. Then we'll go into the wide receiver and tight end usage, and then we'll jump into some DraftKings stuff. So as we can kind of see here, Montgomery's had pretty elite usage, right? So basically both weeks, 66% snap percentage, hovering around like a 20% target share, which is great. And he's seeing, relative to Herbert, he's seeing a lot of the attempts. He saw 15 last week to 4 for Herbert, especially when, um, you know, especially with Chicago trailing. That was good to see for Montgomery that he's getting there. So I think Montgomery's got some good usage. The involvement here is basically um, when a player's on the field. So for the snaps that they have, how many times are they targeted or have an attempt, right? Versus usage, which is just their targets and attempts versus the total team's play. So you can see Herbert's on the field, 8 snaps, 63% involvement. Versus 13% usage. So when he's on the field, he gets used a lot, but he's not on the field that much, so he doesn't have a ton of usage. This is valuable stuff for when a running back goes down ahead of him, and we'll kind of get into that for when we get to the Cardinals with James Conner a little bit banged up. But yeah, there's some good stuff to kind of take out from here. But right now, I think Montgomery, nothing too crazy on deltas from week 1 to 2, and so that's good to see. He's got Herbert did get a bigger share of the rushing pie in week 1, but Montgomery grabbed it right back with 68% in week 2, and then a couple receiving yards for Montgomery, a couple catches. And the dominator rating is pretty high, which is surprising for a player who hasn't scored any touchdowns. But when the Bears just don't score touchdowns, we're going to see a little bit of a higher dominator rating there. And then Herbert outscored Montgomery in week 1. Montgomery came right back in week 2 and outscored him. I think for the Bears, we kind of throw away that week 1 sample size with the monsoon against the Niners, and we just kind of feel pretty confident to load Montgomery up here as kind of like an RB2 every week, and then Herbert. I think we're taking the wait and see approach, hoping Montgomery maybe gets banged up a little bit. We're not. I'm not confident starting Herbert right now on a weekly basis. Moving on to the Houston running backs, we got Damian Pierce, Rex Burkhead. So this is a kind of a tale of two stories here. So last week, Pierce started the game, and then Burkhead came out with 50% of the snaps, and basically had way more snaps than him. Sorry, 50% of the rushing attempts, way more snaps than Pierce, and all that stuff. And then it looks like my calcs are wrong here for some reason, because this should definitely be a 3, I think. Oh, I don't know where I'm grabbing this from. Okay, no worries. I don't think the snap percentage is right here for Pierce. Obviously, he's got 39 to 22. You know what? Let's just try to fix this right now. We're not doing anything here. Let's just this could throw us off here. So snap percentage, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. A through F, column 6. V lookup. Week 1. That's why. All right, everything's changed. Everything has changed. Should we go back? Should we start from the top? All right, we're good. We're live. Got to drag this down for everybody and get back underway. I think that was the one column I missed. Okay. So where were we? Pierce, 63% of the snaps this week compared to 29 last week, and he got all the carries, 15% of the carries. So this is what a lot of people are drafting Pierce at. I think we can be a little bit more confident this week. 30% usage is really good from a running back. So I think you're live loading Pierce up. A lot of people went, myself included, to grab Burkhead off the waivers. But yeah, I think Pierce is going to be the guy here. 69 rushing yards, 8 receiving yards. I would like to see if he's going to be a little bit more engaged in the passing game. Although Burkhead only had 2 catches, so nothing too crazy there. And then fantasy points, obviously, just not a whole lot from the Texans last week. We just really didn't get a whole lot of points out of them, right? We Pierce had 8.7 PPR points, and that accounted for 20% of the team share. When I'm doing the PPR share here, that is not accounting for quarterback points. So it's a little bit better to get a feel for like how dominant that skill position player is on their team. So I think that's enough about running backs. I mean, I don't really want to spend hardly any time on the Bears receivers because they just don't throw the ball. They were down all game against the Packers and they threw it 11 times. So RIP to people who drafted Darnell Mooney, but I mean, I don't even think it's just worth even looking through this. So these guys just aren't even like getting targets, aren't catching the ball. All these stats are just incredibly small sample size. So I think you can't start any Bears receivers. Equanimous St. Brown is obviously Amon-Ra's brother there, so he's starting to pop up a little bit. And Pettis caught a touchdown last week, but I mean, other than that, I don't know. I think it's just kind of a mess. Or sorry, Pettis caught one in week 1, not in week 2. Pettis and St. Brown did. And then I mean, same thing for Cole Kmet, Ryan Griffin. I mean, just punt these guys off. I don't even know if Cole Kmet is a guy worth keeping on your roster right now. Jumping down to the Houston side, I think is a little bit more interesting. We see the snaps that are always up there for Brandon Cooks. He's always on the field, 90% range pretty much every week. And then Nico Collins and Chris Moore have been kind of in the 60s, 50 to 60 range and kind of splitting some of those out wide snaps there. And then that's really it. Brevin Jordan and Farrell Brown kind of shared some workload load at tight end in week 1, but then it was more the Farrell Brown show. And I know a lot of people were kind of thinking it would be Brevin Jordan on on the field more often, but they did get a roughly the same amount of targets. I like the volume out of the Texans. They seem to be doing fine. They just aren't scoring points here, but they're trying to get it ripping. But they only scored 9 against the Broncos last week. So moving over into some of the let's see if like our any of our advanced stats can give us any help here. So Nico Collins 113 air yards. That's pretty good. For those who don't know the air yard stat, that's basically the amount of time the ball is in the air on a target, right? From the line of scrimmage to wherever it hits the receiver's hands or hits the ground if it's not a completion. So it doesn't account for any yards after catch. And why we like to track air yards is it allows us to understand what the potential is for the receiver, right? So Nico Collins, 113 yards. Yeah, he only caught 58 of them. But the potential's there, right? He's got the upside there to catch more of them. We also want to look at kind of A dot when we're talking about this, right? So A dot of 12.6, a big air yard share. That's all positive stuff. And then we kind of get into some of the efficiency ratings, right? So Whopper is weighted opportunity rating, and it basically accounts for like their share of targets, air yards, kind of all that into a weighted equation. And then Racer, I think I say that right, Racer, I don't know. But that's receiver air yards conversion rate, right? So that's basically the receiving yards to the air yards that they get, right? So the higher the Racer here, the better. Obviously, if they have over a 1, then that means they're getting some yards after the catch, right? So like Ryan Griffin here, 18 to 16, he's getting some yards after the catch. He's more efficient on his air yards than maybe a Nico Collins last week, who's at a 0.51. And so this is beneficial to look at over multiple weeks. Like right now, it's still just a small sample size, but you can see like Collins was converting his air yards well last week. He was 0.76. This week he dropped down to 0.51. So if this was like a 3 week average of like zero point 0.8, and this week he saw a ton of air yards, but he was like a 0.4 or something, then that's an idea of like, okay, he's getting the opportunity, he's getting the air yards, he's got the opportunity there. He just had a bad week converting these, right? So maybe next week in week 3 he's a bounce back candidate. I still think it's a little early to completely say that yet, just because we're only looking at 2 weeks. But hey, I mean, there's some potential there. And I think Nico Collins is a guy that I wouldn't be stashing just kind of based on the peripherals there. Brandon Cooks, just continues to be pretty efficient. He's always a pretty efficient guy, always pretty quiet guy, but does get a lot of. Last week he had 50% of the air yards. This week dropped down to 25. Pretty good whopper. So yeah, I think pretty good stuff out of Brandon Cooks. Nico Collins and Brandon Cooks would be the two guys that I'd be keeping my eye on. And I'm just not sure we're seeing much more out of the Texans side here. Okay, we spent way too much time on the first game. I'm check in with the chat, see what we're doing here. Anybody confused yet? Is this crazy? Is everybody dropping off the stream? I'm having fun. We're gonna keep diving in. Patrick says Brevin Jordan was a beast in college. Wonder how long he comes into his own. Yeah, I could see it happening. He was a lot of the hype in week one. So we'll flip over real quickly to DraftKings. And you know what? I'm just going to share this screen right now. I know a couple people in my Discord were asking about it. I'm not going to share this typically on a weekly basis. I'll just reference it as I'm flipping through it. But this is how I set up my spreadsheet for DraftKings. This is how I kind of make my lineups and stuff like that on the weekend. This is how I create the flow chart, stuff like that for DraftKings. So a lot of colors. I'm a maniac when it comes to colors. Blue means good, green means all right. Everything else means it kind of sucks. The more blue, the better. And it's all relative to like value and projection and stuff like that. And I use establish the run, so that's why I'm not going to share this weekly. This is, I just burn straight from their projections. But looking at ownership, looking at projections, looking at the ETR value, game level, game, what the hell is this one called? GLSP. It's like game level something prediction or whatever. This is from RotoViz. So they basically go through their full like simulations of previous games and whatever, and they say how likely is this player to score X amount of points, right? So I have different value. Like, so how likely is David Montgomery to get 4x? 4x value this week, 28% is pretty good. Rex Burke at 30%, Brandon Cooks 32%, stuff like that. So when we're looking at like these ceiling outcomes, get into get into a 4x outcome or a 5x outcome, stuff like that. That's really what we're looking for. And then yeah, I've got the amount of time they get to their ceiling outcome, which is the ETR thing. And then I've got this Z score thing, which is kind of like it's kind of like an average of like a bunch of standard deviations and stuff like that. I honestly made it a couple years ago. I don't really remember exactly how I did it, but it kind of pops out value relative to like similar players. So right now it's kind of hard to tell because nobody's grouped by pricing. They're all grouped by team. But when a group of players is priced around, if they've got a good combo of like ownership, projection, value, all that stuff, their Z score is going to pop a little bit. And Brandon Cooks right now, I mean, for me, he's blues across the board, which blues is really good. So Brandon Cooks seems like a pretty good value this week at 5,800. Just not really sure this is a game environment you want to get a part of, but if you can make Brandon Cooks fit, maybe he's got some potential. And then that's really about it. I mean Montgomery's looking to be really chalky, so I'm just not into a chalky Montgomery 25% ownership. That seems like a pretty clear stay away. Darnell Mooney at 5,300 isn't projecting very great, so I would stay away there and have the Bears prove to us that they're going to pass. I would not play Fields. Again, let's prove that they're going to pass. Dameon Pierce is interesting, 5,000, pretty low priced. I think I could see him really beating this if this is a slog it out running game and he's going to be the guy they're leaning on. So I'm interested in some Dameon Pierce at 5,000 this week for sure. But yeah, I think that's about it for this game. So I'll flip back over. I'm not going to keep popping that one up. I am willing to kind of I'm willing to share the framework of that. If anybody wants it, just hit me up, DMs. I can give you that. Obviously, I'm not going to share the projections and stuff like that from ETR because they do great work, and you should subscribe there if you want it. But as far as the framework of my sheet that I take from theirs and create my own stuff, I'm more than welcome to share that with anybody who wants it. Consigliere says, "How much money do we have to do this for FanDuel?" FanDuel sucks, man. FanDuel is the much lower tier platform. All right, we got another touchdown, looks like. So let's see where we're at here. Play by play, scoring, what just happened. Trubisky rush up the middle. All right, so let's take a little view at some stats here, right? So we got longest run. It still looks like it's going to be Nick Chubb, right? He's kind of running away with this thing. He's got 14,000 moments on all day, so I wouldn't be rushing out to buy him yet. Johnson's up in the 4 range. Cooper and Njoku are all 4. So I think it's worth checking the fine print on this. Tiebreaker rule. If multiple players are tied for a qualifying spot in any of the challenges requirements, all players who will tied will be eligible. So that's different. Eligible is different than required, right? Last week there was a couple I think where they were required. This week, it's just one moment of the player with the most receptions. So this is great for a guy like Njoku, I think, or I'm assuming he's going to be much cheaper than Cooper and Johnson right now. And then let's take a look at our Denzel Ward's up to 4 tackles, so that is looking pretty big. I know he was like a $12 moment this morning. Miles Garrett still's got the 1 assist. Sutton he's also up to 3 tackles. He's got a moment on there, and he was not getting a whole lot of love. Fitzpatrick still got the 1. Edmonds still got the 1, and our guy Hayward's got 2. So Fitzpatrick's looking like he's got a little bit of a hill to climb here to get into it. Everybody was complaining about him, but here we go. And Mike says Njoku's got 6 now. Wow, that is 7 catches now. So he is just on fire right now. Okay, there we go. I like it. All right, we're moving on. We're 20 minutes into this. We've gone through one shitty game. Okay, Carolina at New Orleans at Carolina. New Orleans on the road, favored by 2.5. Over unders 41 here. So I don't think there's a whole lot that we got to say about Christian McCaffrey. People are freaking out. The guy only scored 15 points and then 16 points, right? So for McCaffrey, that's not a lot. But look at these like outcomes of his team, right? 40% of their fantasy points last week, 30% of them this week. The Panthers just kind of suck. So I think we're gonna bet on them maybe figuring it out a little bit, maybe maybe turning it around. But I mean, the usage is there: 91% snap, 19% target share, 65% attempts. I mean, that's just everything we want. You're not sitting Christian McCaffrey. It's just not going to happen. You can't do it. 102 rushing yards finally broke the barrier there. Got a touchdown last week. I mean, all these things are going to come together for him. I did see that he banged up his ankle today, but I think he even mentioned after if I was to go take a leak on the side, that would be reported. So I'm not too worried about McCaffrey. We're firing him up. Okay, this Saints is interesting, right? So Kamara was out last week in week 2, didn't play. I forget if it's an ankle or a hammy or something. Can't keep up with all the injuries, but he was out, and so we had Mark Ingram, stepping into his place theoretically, but actually Tony Jones Jr. saw more of the snaps. But not really much of the opportunity, right? So he's on the field much more. But you can see from the involvement here that Ingram was in the mix way up more often than Tony Jones. So I think we're going to lean into that. Same Ingram was used on 25% of his snaps last week. So I think we're going to keep riding with Ingram if Kamara's out. But Jones is just enough to make you not really want to play Ingram if you're in season long. And yeah, I mean, Kamara, I think jury's still out. 1 week sample against a tough who was that? Was that a tough? I forget who they played in week 1. It wasn't the Bucks. But anyways, I think jury's still out on Kamara. I don't think you're dropping him or anything too drastically, but it could be a little bit, of sketchy stuff going on there with Jameis, not really getting to Kamara how we like to see it. Okay, Carolina receivers. DJ Moore just doesn't come off the field. 100% of snaps last week, 97% this week. Robbie Anderson on the other side, pretty much the same thing. 100 last week and 93. And then Shea Smith, whatever. He's Pretty much the wide receiver 3. There's not really anybody else on the sheet getting fantasy points. If they're not on the sheet, that means they haven't recorded a fantasy point yet. So yeah, pretty tight 3 receiver set for the Panthers, which we like to see. But just a total of 17, so like 26 pass attempts or something last week if you count for the McCaffrey targets. So we want to see more of the volume there out of Baker. And a pretty spread out, right? 5, 6, 6, 5. I mean, that's not great when we're targeting that in fantasy. We want to see a couple guys separate from the pack there a little bit. Let's see if any of these metrics are good for any of these guys. They all have decently high A dots, all in the 10 range, which is interesting. It must just mean, yeah. So when you see these conversion rates so low, I mean, that's just kind of when you see a high ADOT and a low conversion rate across the team, that kind of just means the quarterback is not very accurate. So I think that's what we're dealing with. It was good to see DJ Moore get a touchdown last week, but not much else going on there. Did he get a touchdown? Yeah. Not much else going on there. Robbie Anderson had the big week one, then cooled down a little bit in week two. So yeah, Panthers are just not very exciting, but I'm not giving up on them yet. I think we still kind of want to wait and see, take the wait and see approach with them. Okay, I think it's really interesting to look at New Orleans. So I'm actually going to start with the tight ends, and then we'll jump back to wide receivers. So I mean, Taysom Hill is kind of an interesting cheat code, right? I mean, uh, you know, he only had 1.4 fantasy points this week after going for 15 last week. So I think that's just a little blip. He's going to be annoying enough to, kind of piss you off if you have other Saints, but I don't think he's really a reliable fantasy asset. I really like Jawan Johnson here. Adam Troutman was getting drafted ahead of him all offseason, but Jawan Johnson, almost 80% of snaps both of the last 2 weeks and 16 to 18% target share. I mean, that's really good for a tight end, especially when he's going to be pretty cheap on DraftKings every week. We'll jump over to that later. Only 2 receptions, so only a where's my catch rate? Do I not have catch rate? Oh, no, sorry. 4 receptions in week two for about a 57% catch rate. So that's not horrible. 40 yards, 4 for 40. So that's pretty good out of Juwan. And Troutman's just a bagel. So I think Juwan Johnson is worth maybe stashing on your team if you need him. He's a pretty athletic dude. Used to be a receiver, so I don't hate him if you don't have really any tight end options. Which tight end's just a tough position. A lot of the tight ends are sucking this year. Okay, we gotta zoom all the way over here for Chris Olave, who who has not even showed up on the chart here. I think probably there's just an error or something, but but he had freaking like 360 air yards last week. I was really hoping that would pop. Um, so that's weird, but he had a ton of air yards. So that's good for Olave. Damn, I don't know why that's not showing up. That's a bummer. Um, so that's good for the rookie. You want to see the rookie getting a lot of opportunity. But what we don't love out of that is just the Jameis portion of things, right? Where Jameis is just kind of crazy, right? So we could call those prayer yards if we wanted to. But getting into the rest of the receivers, I mean, it's Olave, Landry, and Thomas are really kind of the three-headed monster here, all on the field about 75% of the snaps. Olave did see obviously an outsized target share there with 13, and Thomas with 9. Well, it'd be interesting to see if that's 'cause they're playing from behind a little bit more. The I guess the Bucks didn't really pull away with it until the end there last week. So I don't know, not too crazy maybe, but that's a good sign for Olave for sure. I would be in on that, even though he only scored 13 fantasy points this week. And then Michael Thomas with another touchdown. I think that's his third of the year. So you got to love that if you're drafting Thomas. Jumping over to DraftKings for these guys. Um, we've got a whole lot of nothing this week. I mean, even McCaffrey doesn't look great at 8,800. If he's 10% owned, though, I feel like you always got to fire up a little bit of Christian McCaffrey. DJ Moore at 5,600. That's right in the sweet spot where it's good to play DJ Moore. But I think this New Orleans defense is pretty serious. So I think it's probably going to be a spot to stay away. I played a decent amount of Bucks last week, and that just didn't work out too well. Juwan Johnson's looking good at 2,900, and all the receivers on the Saints are just kind of grading out fairly, nothing too crazy. All right, moving on. Game two. Let's check if anybody's here. Anybody's here. Ryan says Udoka's out for the season. That's crazy. Um, I guess that's why you listen to the warnings that you get from the organization. Patrick says Njoku's already up to 25. I think he started at 18, so that's good. And then the consigliere says Chris Olave is a spreadsheet owner. That's for sure. That is for sure, my guy. All right, moving on. Green Bay at the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Line is a pick 'em, and we have a paltry total of 42. AJ Dillon, Aaron Jones. I think we're just going to be starting both of these guys. On the field, 60% of snaps. Both saw 3 targets, 18-15 rushing attempts. in week one, they were pretty even on their rushing share. In week two, Aaron Jones was a lot more productive, really ran away with it, 65% of it. But I mean, still getting the one catch for 6 yards and 61 rushing yards for AJ Dillon is good. And he's always live to score some touchdowns. This week they went to Aaron Jones twice, but Dillon's live to get in there. So he scored 20 last week, Jones 10, this week 32 and 7. I think I'm pretty confident Jones is going to be the guy that makes some more explosive plays this year. But I do have a lot of trust in our guy AJ Dillon, and I have no issues firing him up. Moving on to Tampa Bay. So Leonard Fournette has not scored well. I know I keep jumping around on these sheets, guys. Sorry. We're getting our feet under us. We're getting this figured out. But last week Leonard Fournette 15.7 PPR points. This week 9.4. He did let us know that the touchdowns are coming on Twitter, so that's always a good thing to see. But I mean, he's just a guy that we can't give up on yet. I'm gonna probably play him again this week. But he's just seeing truly, truly elite usage. 76% of the snaps last week, 87 this week, 80% of the rushing shares this week. 4 targets, you'd like to see that go up a little bit, but the Bucs just aren't really passing too much. But yeah, I mean, 90% of the rushing yards, even though they only 65, and still getting 2 catches for 9 yards. Again, we want that higher, but I mean, for a guy that scored 9.4 points, for him to post a 20% dominator rating is pretty impressive from the running back. So it's definitely not time to give up on Leonard Fournette. Um, Rashad White, I think, is still a good stash, though. He's the only other back really doing anything. And if Leonard Fournette goes down, you would have to assume he kind of steps into this role. And that's just a great guy to keep stashed on your bench if you have enough depth there. Man, Buccaneers receiving both of these teams' receiving cores are just kind of a mess, right? So Mike Evans gotten a little bit of a scuffle. He's out this week. Russell Gage still seems to be banged up. He got 6 targets, but didn't really do a whole lot with them this week. Let's see, Russell Gage 28 yards, 5 catches, 28 yards. Yeah, it's just not nothing too crazy there. Um, and then Godwin, we'll see if he's good to go this week. Julio, we'll see if he's good to go. I mean, the stuff's just so contingent on whether these guys are healthy or not. But I mean, right now it sounds like they're trotting out Perryman and Scotty Miller for Brady to pass it to. So that's kind of interesting. I did want to talk about Russell Gage's racer here. We talked about that's the receiving conversion rate. So it's really high. It's popping off green on the sheets. That may think that that's a good thing, right? But if you look at only 10 air yards and he's got 28 receiving yards. So the 10 air yards mean that that's not really a valuable piece of data to use, right? If this was 100 air yards and he was posting, a 2.8, then that's awesome. But at 10, that's just kind of noise. So we don't really want to look at that too much. But yeah, I mean, these receivers are a mess. I mean, geez, talk about a mess. Let's look at our Packers. I'm pretty sure every single guy on this list outside of Romeo Dubs did not practice today, which is always really good leading up to a weekend Sunday game. But I mean, this is just disgusting. 3-2, 3-3-2. I mean, geez. I just don't know if you can take a whole lot from this. I think you're starting the running backs every week and you're waiting for somebody on the Packers to gain Aaron Rodgers' trust. When we look at the thing about Jones and Dillon is they're always going to show up as bad. They're always going to show up as mediocre DraftKings plays in the projections, right? Because they just are. Their median projection is going to eat into each other. But if for any time, if any of these guys are showing any outsized ownership or whatever, or if maybe they're a punt play compared to somebody else who's popular in that range, like in the 6,000 range, 7,400 range for Aaron Jones this week, then I think they're really good pivots, even though they don't project well. Because we saw last week, we saw with week one, Dylan went off. Last week, Aaron Jones went off. I think these guys have the ceiling in them. They're just never going to project well. It's kind of like Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt. They're always just kind of eating into each other. And then, yeah, I mean, the Packers receivers, just nobody is looking like they're worth playing this week. I wouldn't touch any of them unless you are really confident who's going to be catching passes. Leonard Fournette's looking like he's going to be popular this week. He's dropped down to 6,500 or 6,700 last week. And of course, we just talked about his usage, so he's projecting really well. ETR has Julio in, Russell Gage in, and Godwin out. So Gage at 4,700 and even Brashad Perryman at 3,900 are looking pretty good. And Brady at 6,000 it seems pretty low too. But I don't know, man. I just don't trust the Packers have a pretty good passing defense, and I just don't trust that the that the Bucks are going to be passing a whole lot here. So I think this is kind of just a stay away game too. We got plenty of others to look at. All right, here we go. Checking out. Also 35-35. Only have three. I don't know what that was in reference to. Might have missed that. Any action here? Where it looks like we're about halftime in the game, so we can get cooking here. Okay, game number 4 on the spread sheets is the let's see where we're at here. Afternoon game, Atlanta Falcons at Seahawks. This one's also a pick 'em and also a total of 42. So I think the biggest thing that we got to look out for out on Atlanta is if Damian Williams is going to be healthy. He started week 1 with the first couple drives, and then he didn't, and he got hurt, and he didn't play in week 2. But that kind of leads me to believe that if he is healthy, he's going to be the lead guy. But in the meantime, it's obviously looking like it's going to be Cordarrelle Patterson here. Algier, the rookie, did play 32% of snaps this week, and they split the attempts 10 and 10. But Patterson's on the field a little bit more, and he's probably a little bit more efficient in some of this stuff. Yeah, 44% of the rushing yards. Not too many, no receptions for either of these guys. It's kind of interesting. Even with the Falcons in comeback mode here. Patterson obviously had a big week in week 1, 22.6 PPR points, and completely dudded out this week. So yeah, I mean, I don't know. Patterson's always been a guy that relies on efficiency, and if he's getting half of the carries now with Algier, or if it's going to be Williams or whatever, I think he still might be a guy that if it's worth selling, I would do it. If people are still interested in that week 1 bump. Dropping down to Seattle. Really interesting here. Kenneth Walker didn't play in week 1, so Rashad Penny saw 70% of the work snap share. And then Kenneth Walker came back in week 2, and it was just a mess, right? So nobody over 50% of the snaps, nobody over 50% of the attempts. Just ugly stuff. I mean, oh God, each of these guys had 10 freaking rushing yards. So yeah, that's just not good. Homer obviously is going to be the guy catching passes, so that eats into Penny and Walker. Just looks like a backfield to stay away from until one of these guys really breaks out. I wouldn't be worth betting on either of these guys. Everybody's favorite guy to crap on right now is Kyle Pitts. But let's dig into the metrics and see if they mean anything. Kyle Pitts and Drake London. We'll spend some time here because I think the other guys are kind of whatever. So Drake London, they both were on the field for a decent amount of week 1, and they both had 22% target shares. Week 2, they both bumped up. London on the field for 83, by far the highest of any receiver, and Pitts on the field for a whole 95, which is amazing for a tight end. We want to see that. We want to see him get more targets though than just 3. London with 12 and a 48% target share is very elite. And jumping into how these guys did through the air, right? So 86 receiving yards for London on 8 catches and only 19 for 2 on Pitts. Pitts only got 25% of the air yards, which is kind of a bummer. I'm thinking there might be an issue with rookies in my spreadsheet. I don't know why Drake London is not showing up with air yards either, same as Chris Olave. I'll definitely have to look into that. Kyle Pitts only 25 air yards and turned that into 19 receiving yards. Not great. We do like to see Drake London's weighted opportunity rating up at 0.72, and his with the touchdown added in, his dominator rating is up to 40%. That's great. That's really great. That's what we want to see. This is a good gut check to use the dominator rating to gut check onto the PPR share. So 40% dominator rating, 42% PPR share. That's money. That's good stuff from London. Looks like an auto start. I would keep starting Pitts. Hopefully he gets some more targets. He's on the field a lot. Did have some somewhat discouraging comments from Arthur Smith this week about we're not playing fantasy football. We're here to win. Come on, Arthur. We are here to play fantasy football, baby. Okay. And then jumping into Seattle. So Will Dissly caught the touchdown from the tight ends in week 1. No offense, Will Dissly split the snaps in week 2, so that's a little concerning if you took a mid to late round bet on Noah Fant. Tyler Lockett just always goes about 3 or 4 rounds behind DK Metcalf and always does about the same as him in season. These guys usually back with Russell Wilson with split big spike weeks. So this week, 11 targets for Lockett, 6 for Metcalf. Maybe that swaps next week. Not a whole lot to dig into there. Air yards, just would really love to see more air yards from these guys. We know Lockett and Metcalf are. Oh, sorry, that's week one. Here we go, week two. We're looking at some air yards. 118. You see, I said we need more air yards, and we got it. 118 for Lockett, 49 for Metcalf. It's a little bit better. 69% share for Lockett. That's great. And a .91 conversion rate on 118 air yards is really good. That's really elite, and a whopper over one is really elite too. So yeah, I mean, the Seahawks. Is this game going to be great? I don't know. Rams put up a lot of points against the Falcons, and I'm thinking it was the Bucks now in Week 1 that played the Falcons. Uh, let's see if I'm right there. Whatever. Bad for TV. It was New Orleans. And New Orleans put up 27. So yeah, I mean, I like. I think Seattle's interesting this week. Let's check out how they're projecting on DraftKings. So Cordell Patterson's not looking great. Drake London is looking pretty nice at 5,800. He's gonna probably be a pretty good option. Kyle Pitts has dropped down to 4,800, and he's gonna be a guy that all the analysts are just gonna say keep playing him, keep betting on him. The field is not gonna bet on him, so I think he's a great play. Interesting. So Rashad Penny and Kenneth Walker are the same price. Penny's projecting a lot better than Kenneth Walker. Based on what we just saw, I think that's a clear stay away. I would not buy into the Rashad Penny hype based on some of the usage we just saw. Those guys are pretty equal, and I would think that they should be projecting a little bit more equally. So if Penny starts catching some steam at 4,900, I think that could be some bad chalk there. Um, and then both DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett are in the 6,100, 5,800 range. And both of them project pretty well. So I'd probably lean with ownership there. And I don't have an issue firing one of these guys in, maybe pairing them up with Drake London. That's a pretty cheap mini stack with some pathways to success there. I don't really, Marcus Mariota is interesting. I think one of these weeks he's going to have a huge fantasy week, maybe rush for a couple touchdowns, throw for a couple. I'm not sure if it's this week. It could be. But one of these weeks it's going to happen. So I don't mind taking flyers on him at 5,500 and just hoping for that rushing upside. Um, all right, we are moving on. 28 people. So somehow I've been talking through a spreadsheet for 45 minutes and more people have joined. I love it. I love to see it. Feel free, guys, to if I mean, I gotta go faster because we gotta get through all these. But if there's stuff that you want me to explain again, or if there's stuff that's coming up where it's like, hey, wait, why did you say that when you looked at these numbers or whatever, feel free to fire those in, and I will get to them. But yeah, we're gonna keep cranking here. So game number 5 on my list here is Baltimore, New England. So that's an interesting one. Baltimore's at New England. They're favored by 3, and the total's 44 this week. So will this be the week we see J.K. Dobbins back? That I think is the big question. I think we're all hoping so because the Baltimore running game has just been a little bit of a disaster. We can see none of these guys even had over 40% of the snaps, which is insane. And none of them had over 30% of the rushing attempts. Just stay away from them until Dobbins comes back and we see what the hell's going on there. I mean, obviously the game last week with the Dolphins was a shootout, but still, I mean, you'd think one of these guys would be on the field at least a decent amount when they're in prove it mode there. And then this week we didn't have Ty Montgomery, which is pretty nice, right? So last week we saw just a horrible rushing share. Again, none of these guys over 40% of the snaps. This week, no Ty Montgomery, so Ramondre's snaps bumped up quite a bit. He was in 62% of the snaps, and but still, they both saw 2 targets, Harris and Ramondre. And Harris's involvement rate. So when Harris was on the field, he was used a lot more than Ramondre was. So that's a little bit concerning. You'd want to see, we're thinking when Montgomery goes out, they're going to go to Stevenson more. But it just didn't really look like it happened. And Harris there had half of the rushing attempts. So if Ty Montgomery's healthy this week, I think it's a stay away. Even if not, I mean, you can play these guys. One of them's probably going to have a week where they do well. I mean, Harris did all right, 16.7 fantasy points this last week, but it's just going to be hard to pick. And like, there's going to be some weeks when Ramondre does well. There's going to be some weeks with Damian Harris does well, but you're just never going to be able to get it right. And I think you're just going to be kind of pissed off. So if they're like if you're in a deep starting lineup league where you have multiple flexes, multiple running backs, or whatever, maybe one of these guys you just fire into the flex if you don't have any other better wide receiver options. But I would not be firing these guys up as starting running backs in your lineup. Um, so the so the running backs are ugly in this game. Now we're going to go into the wide receivers. I mean, the Patriots are interesting, right? Because last week they really spread it around a lot, and they did again this week too, right? So looks like seven different players had a target. But Jacoby Myers, 20% target share last week, 38% target share this week. That's pretty good. We like to see that. And then Nelson Aguilar, I think, was getting a lot of the deep balls. So we want to look into the data here with some of these top four guys in week two. So ADOT for Devontae Parker was 26.5. But how many targets did my guy get? Two targets, right? So not great there. Oh shoot, sorry, I'm all over the place. So not really great there. 53 air yards, two targets, didn't catch any of them. Nelson Aguilar, on the other hand, had some catch and run going, right? 69 air yards turned that into 110 receiving yards. So that's positive. That's good stuff. That's a high amount of air yards, and he was able to convert those pretty well. On the flip side, Myers 35% air yard share on the day. He corralled those for 95 yards. We like that. Nine catches. I mean, this is all good stuff from Jacoby. So, I mean, out of the gates, it does look like Myers and Aguilar are going to be kind of the guys you want. And I think this is an interesting spot for them this week. You can see both these guys scored over 20. A touchdown for Aguilar helped. Or I guess he didn't score. Myers didn't score 20. He scored 18 and a half this week. But I think these guys are going to be an interesting spot here with Baltimore because if there's no Dobbins, we know the Ravens are going to be passing. And let's look at how these Ravens are passing here. The tight end side, we've got Isaiah Likely that's doing just enough to kind of be a pain in the ass for Mark Andrews. 34% of the snaps, 17% target share. So that's just a little bit of bummer. That's definitely limiting a little bit of Andrews' ceiling. He caught 4 for 43. But I mean, Andrews did just fine, right? He had 9 catches, 104 yards, and a touchdown for 25.7 fantasy points. The by far the best tight end score of the week. And then Rashad Bateman, 27% air yard share, had the big long touchdown, 108 receiving yards, 4 catches. Duvernay did not catch a touchdown. He got two the last week and didn't do anything this week. 2 for 42. Demarcus Robinson squeaked in there with a touchdown too in the shootout there. So I wouldn't really count on Robinson, but I think the numbers look great for Andrews and Bateman, and I think we're going to keep firing those guys up. And I don't think anybody's going to play the Patriots this week. Let's see if that's true in that first round of projections. Um, Actually, it doesn't look like anybody's going to play this game at all. So nobody's projecting well besides Mark Andrews at 6,900 in the Baltimore game. Even Bateman's not looking too great at 5,700. Lamar is looking all right at 8,000, but there's probably better quarterback options. And then unfortunately, Jacoby Myers is going to be chalk. So he's 5,000 and he's looking like he's going to be in the 20% range. So you don't love that. You don't love a mixed Patriots receiver core where that's going to be chalk. And so I think Nelson Aguilar is an interesting pivot off of Myers. We just talked through his numbers. He's been doing pretty well. He's not going to be owned at all. He's 4,900 bucks cheaper. You can do a little mini stack with Mark Andrews, Nelson Aguilar, Rashad Bateman, Nelson Aguilar, stuff like that. I like that. I like that angle. If Dobbins is out, that means the Ravens are going to throw. We saw last week that the Patriots are willing to throw. And there we go. Here we go. Here we go. So DJ Local said catch is going to be Pickens' debut. I think I got to go find this catch because it's looking like a good one. I love Pickens. Stud, total stud. Good to see him finally having a big game. Consigliere says you should do an evergreen primer video on the work where we break down the columns, things we're looking for. That way you can just cruise through and ref the vid when people ask. Yeah, good call. Ty Montgomery's on IR, thanks to Ryan. Thank you for that. So he's not going to be in the picture for a couple weeks. And Mike said Duvernay did get the kickoff. Yeah, he started the game with the kickoff. That's a good call. We started up in the second half here. Does not look like it. Looks like we're still at halftime. Should we? Let's check out some price action here. Let's do a little cruising. Let's do a little cruising on the all day. I need a little bit of a break from talking here, and then we'll fire through these last few games. We're gonna go to the marketplace. We are gonna see. Let's see. What's the best way to do this on all day? Cleveland, uh, Pitt, and then we're gonna look at defense. Uh, DL, LB, DB, baby. Let's see what's going on with the defenders here. Let's see what is going on with the defenders. How do I sort by lowest ask? Okay, so these guys aren't on the team anymore. Clowney's out. Watt is out. Edmonds is only at 14. Miles Garrett at 17. Sutton did bump up to 22. He was in the $12 range, so he's in the running. Denzel Ward's up to 34. That's looking nice. And Cam Hayward has dropped down to 94. My pregame bet does not look like it's paying off there. Why is Minka not showing up on here? Oh, there we go. We got to get into the second level here. Minka's up to down to 150. So everybody complaining about why did they create a bottleneck? Blah 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 blah. Have some of that. Gotta watch the games, baby. Gotta see what happens. All right, that's fun. Interested to hear. Hopefully, if you got a Minka, you sold him. I think that was probably the smart play. I don't know what I would have done, but I think once he got into the 250 range, I probably would have sold him. Okay, game number 6 of the day. We're going down to Cincinnati and the Jets. Here we go. Cincinnati's favored by 6 on the road against the Jets. Over unders 45. I mean, we saw what the Jets just did last week, right? Flacco brought him back. Um, brought him back. 31 points on the board. The Bengals have not looked like the Bengals. They've looked like they do not look like the Super Bowl runner-ups. They're starting at 0-2. And I think this could be an interesting, sneaky little spot. I don't think many people are going to be targeting this game, but I think this could be a little bit of a shootout here on Sunday. So let's dive in here. Joe Mixon and Samaje Perine. Perine is not really posing too much of a threat. One rushing attempt, one target in week 2. So that's elite usage from Joe Mixon. We like that a lot. We also like to see Joe Mixon get 3 catches for 26 yards. That's great. Um, and only 57 rushing yards. So not a huge day on the ground for Mixon, but elite usage is there. We don't have anything to be concerned about. On the Jets, it's a mess. So with Michael Carter and Brees Hall, it was a mess, and then we got our guy Ty Johnson mixed in, and it's even worse. So Brees Hall is just hyper efficient right now. 19 snaps, 42% involvement rate, which is pretty good. And then 7 attempts, same as Michael Carter, 7 attempts. Ty Johnson getting three targets, and Michael Carter getting 5 targets is just not what you want if you're a Brees Hall owner. You were thinking that Brees Hall was going to get all the targets, and he only got 1 last week. So I think it's a wait and see approach on this backfield. In week 1, Michael Carter saw 72% of the rushing yards. This week he only got 25%. Brees Hall 50 yards. And then I think Hall caught a touchdown too, right? Yeah. So Hall is just balling out on efficiency right now. 1 catch, 10 yards, 50 rushing yards, and a touchdown on 19 snaps. So I think that's a little bit of noise there. I wouldn't really buy into the Brees Hall hype until we see some more opportunity start to go his way. Obviously, we've seen his explosiveness, but I just am a little bit nervous there about really firing him up every week because it's just a muddy backfield for sure. Okay, Cincinnati. T. Higgins, Jamar Chase, Tyler Boyd. Those are all we care about. And it's great. We just looked at the Patriots where 7 guys caught passes. And in this game, well, I guess there's 2 random tight ends in here that did too. But like all the passes went to Higgins, Chase, and Hurst basically. Boyd caught 2, couple down here. I mean, that's like when we're looking at games to target and daily fantasy stuff like that. When things really condense like that, that's really what we're after. We want to see offenses condensed. And then that wasn't catches, that was targets, dude. Come on, JBB, get your head out of your ass. So when we get to catches, yeah, same shit. 652. let's see where we're at on efficiency. We always like to look at this with some of these studs, right? So last week, Jamar Chase 108 air yards. This week, 57. So we want to see Burrow airing it out to him a little bit more. Last week, T. Higgins only 18 air yards. This week, 96 with a concussion. So that's got to be good for him. And then we got the big touchdown on the T as well. 19 fantasy points for T and 10 for Chase. Flip flop from last week where Chase went off for the big week and T didn't do a whole lot. So I think these guys are kind of going to just keep doing that. I mean, I think you can always bet on Jamar Chase. I think you can always bet on T Higgins. Hopefully the games are a little bit. Hopefully they're scoring a little bit more points and they're both getting in that 15 to 20 range. But one of these guys is bound to blow up every week. Hayden Hurst, I think is a good tight end stash. 82% of the snaps, 20% target share. A lot of that came on like one or two drives there at the end, but I mean, targets are targets, baby. We like to see those. And then the Jets. So we had our first big Garrett Wilson sighting of the year, which was fun to see. He definitely took over for kind of I guess, the Braxton Berrios role from last week. Berrios' snaps are down. Wilson's went way up. Elijah Moore and Corey Davis stayed about the same. 14 targets for Wilson. They say it's a skill to earn targets, so the kid's skilled for sure. 35% involvement, so on the field for 43 in 15 of those plays. So that's great to see. And then let's look at some production here for the receivers, right? So Corey Davis, a big 132 air yards. Yeah, I think my rookie air yards are broken because it says Wilson's got 0, and he definitely didn't. Caught the 2 big touchdowns. Corey Davis with 1. Elijah Moore was the guy that went under the radar here. 13% air yard share. Don't love that. ADOT 9.8. That's pretty good. That's all right. We probably want that a little bit higher. The Whopper is good. Well, I mean, relative to his teammates, it's good, but it's not that great. Garrett Wilson's with 0.48 is a little bit better. So yeah, I mean, you know, after 1 week or 2 weeks, I guess, it seems like Garrett Wilson's the guy over Elijah Moore, but I mean, that could flip flop. That could flip flop easily. Elijah Moore only 9 points last week, 6 this week. Garrett Wilson the same last week, and they blew up for a big 30. And then it looks like Corey Davis just keeps catching touchdowns. Oh no, he just had a big week last week too. I mean, it's an interesting offense. This is a fun little offense. We'll see what they look like on. You don't really say that a whole lot about the Jets. Usually they're in the like, oh crap, this is a mess category. But yeah, this is looking like a good game this week. This is looking like a good game to target. Mixon's popping off. He's blue across the board on my sheets, which is a good sign. Jamar Chase is actually a little bit expensive, 8,100, not projecting very well. T Higgins is right in the money spot there at 6,100, so I like him. Hayden Hurst looks good at 3,900. And then Burrow looks decent at 6,600. If we don't think the Jets are really going to get too much pressure on Burrow, I think that's pretty good. Jets defense, although, I would say the Jets defense is a decent play. 2,400, they're going to be near the minimum. Burrow has been getting sacked and intercepted quite a bit. Tough offensive line to start the year, so I think there's some potential there. And then Michael Carter, Garrett Williams, Elijah Moore are all projecting pretty well in the low 5,000 range. Brees Hall not projecting very well, and we just looked at the numbers and we agreed with that. So I think that's a clear stay away. Flacco's interesting, man. 5,300. We saw a little bit of the upside last week. Could he win so many $1 million on DraftKings? Maybe. I don't know if I'm going to go there, but it's an interesting approach for sure. Okay, game number 7. We're over the halfway mark and we're an hour in. We'll get faster. We'll get faster at this, people. Don't worry. Las Vegas at Tennessee. Las Vegas favored by 2.5. Over under 45.5. So the Raiders, let's check out our guy Josh Jacobs here. In week 1, all the rage was that Zamir White did not get any snaps, right? Josh Jacobs 62% of the snaps. Zamir White was kind of caught some steam after the big preseason game, and we just kind of thought he was gonna eat into Jacobs a little bit, especially with that Josh McDaniels offense. But then in week 2, Zamir White did get a couple more snaps, but Jacobs got 19 attempts for a 90% share. And what did he turn that into? He turned that into 69 rushing yards. Also caught a pass for 12 yards. Um, and no touchdowns yet for Jacob. So hasn't really had a big fantasy week. And I just have to set my Josh Jacobs bias aside because I'm not usually a big Josh Jacobs guy, but I mean the numbers support it. The numbers look good. And I mean, who Tennessee? Tennessee just played Buffalo. They just got the brakes beat off of them, but it's kind of tough to compare anything to Buffalo because they're just such a superior offense. But yeah, I mean, I could see the Raiders having some success this week. Is it going to come through Jacobs? I don't know. If Jacobs is chalk, I'm definitely not playing him. We'll check that out in a minute. But if you've got Jacobs on your team, I think he's a decent start, especially getting 90% of the rushing uh, share here. Brandon Bolden, I think, was out, and I'm not sure what his status is. But he was kind of sneaky in week one. He actually took a lot of the rushing attempts, 23% of the rushing attempts. So that's an interesting one to look at. Amir Abdullah just not really doing a whole lot in this offense. Probably worth a drop if you've got him. Derrick Henry has just pretty much been a bummer, right? So Dontrell Hilliard was the guy with 2 touchdowns in week one. Derrick Henry still had 81% of the attempts, but then in week two, it was kind of split there with Haskins and Henry. I mean, you can't really read a whole lot into that. I mean, the most of the starters in this game just didn't even play in the fourth quarter. I don't even know if Henry played a whole lot in the third quarter when they were in comeback mode. So can't really read too much into that. He did get the 1 touchdown at the beginning of the game, but just a really rough start for King Henry here. 8.2 points, 8.5 points, not what you want to see from him, not what you spent a first round pick on. Okay, let's start with tight ends on the Raiders. Foster Moreau is eating into Darren Waller's share, which is not what the Darren Waller drafters want. Moreau is actually on the field for more snaps than Waller was in week two, and had half the targets, though. Waller did still get 8 targets. So, I guess not too concerning there, but we do want to see Waller's snap count go up a little bit. 6 catches for 50 yards and a touchdown for Waller, which is good. And 3 for 30 for Moreau, which is good if you're playing him in DFS. Devontae Adams obviously had a huge week one, and then he came crashing down to earth as he was chalk in week two. All he did was catch the early touchdown and did pretty much nothing after that. Hunter Renfro, 19 air yards. That's about right for him. Doesn't get a whole lot of air yards. 1.98 out is just gross, though. We want that number to go up if you're a Hunter Renfro owner. Let's see what he got last week in air yards. Uh, or an 8 up 5.2. I mean, that's not great either. We want five is better than two, but I mean, geez, we want it to be a little bit more than that. Mac Hollins, kind of interesting. Seeing a decent amount of air yards here in this game, 26% share. Let's see how much he was on the field for. He's running a lot of routes. 87% of the snaps, 8 targets. Mac Hollins seems like an interesting little guy if he's creeping around on the waiver wires there. All we need is the Raiders to get in a shootout, and it looks like Hollins could be live. So that's interesting. I want to look at Hollins on DFS this week for sure. And then Tennessee, I think it's safe to say that it's the Treylon Burke show, huh? Don't have snap counts in here yet for the Monday night guys. Those always come in later in the week for some reason. But we do have a pretty split target share here: 6 for Burks, 5 for Woods, 4 for Westbrook Akina, and 4 for Hooper. So Tannehill is passing the ball around quite a bit. Again, this game is a blowout, so there's not a ton that we can take away from it. But yeah, here we go. My Burks air yards are dead because he's a rookie. Sweet. Um, but yeah, I mean I thought it was a Traylon Burke show, man, when I was watching the game, but it doesn't really seem like it's showing that on the stats here. The Whopper is pretty spread out amongst these three guys. Woods and Burks both had 4 catches, to Akina's 1. Um, and yeah, I mean there's not a whole lot jumping off the page here for me. Um, so yeah, I guess maybe we're still maybe on the fence about Burks. I don't know, for some reason, maybe just because I had him in a good lineup that was doing well on DraftKings, but it seemed like he was doing a little bit more than that. Okay, let's go check out this game on DraftKings this week. Oh, crap. Josh Jacobs is chalk. 5,400. That's going to be pretty much a stay away, I think. Devontae Adams dropping down a little bit more to 8,400. So that's always going to look like a great play. Probably another great cash game option there. Matt Collins at 3,300 is kind of sneaky. is kind of sneaky this week. I think he's actually projecting pretty well in the game level similarity projections. So that's good. So he's got some chance to hit his ceiling there. And then Waller's not looking too great. Henry's not looking great. None of these guys on Tennessee are looking good. I think I just don't think anybody's good for the price there in Tennessee. So uh, seems like maybe a Devontae Adams and cash week, and that's about it for this game. Okay, moving on. Anybody else? Where we at? Where we at? Where we at? Um, Joe says Burrow double stack with Elijah, bring back for all the monies. I like it. I like it a lot. Elijah is, been a sleeper, so people aren't going to play him. People are going to chase him with Wilson. Consigliere said just skip it. Should have done that. Rabbit says, as someone who doesn't know football but just got into all day, this is fascinating. I cannot even imagine what your brain is thinking right now as I'm just rattling off numbers, but I love it that you're here. Thanks for joining us. Um, Definitely a way to get ahead of big games on all day. Yeah, good stuff. I like it. PPE says one man shot thing. He also says FanDuel is a superior app. I don't really know, but I just am just not a big FanDuel guy at all. Um, and Patrick says, what are your feelings with chalk running back versus chalk wide receiver? What do you feel more comfortable pivoting? Hmm. It's a pretty deep question, I think. I like where your thoughts at. So I think I have an interesting approach to this, right? So when I don't really think about pivots necessarily in the sense of just like pricing pivots, right? So if Josh Jacobs 5,400, I'm not just like pivoting to another 5,500 running back off of Jacobs. Um, and usually I like to do a lot of my pivots based around like the stack that I'm building, right? So I don't know exactly how to answer that. What I try to do is I try to like so let's say like we're playing a Joe Burrow stack, right? Um and we'll just mess around with this a little bit here because it could be kind of fun. So Joe Burrow stack and we're playing we're gonna play T Higgins, but we're not gonna play Jamar Chase, right? So we're just gonna decide not to play Chase and we're gonna play somebody else. Well, that's a way to get different, right? You could say like, okay, I'm not going to play Chase, and I'm just going to play T Higgins and Hayden Hurst, and I'm going to do other stuff with my lineup. Well, I like to kind of take it a step further there, and then I like to try to find leverage at Chase, right? So at Jamar Chase 8,100 price point, I want to then try to find kind of like a guy in that 8,100 price point that I can then play. Because what I'm thinking to myself is, okay, maybe if they skip Chase, they're going to kind of go for a balanced build. They're going to fit in some 5,000, 6,000 people, whatever. But what I'm going to try to do is if I skip Chase, then I'm going to try to plug in like Travis Kelce at 7,900 or Devontae Adams at 8,400. Because in my head, I'm thinking there's not going to be a lot of Joe Burrow lineups that don't have Jamar Chase but do have Travis Kelce, right? Because a lot of people that do have Jamar Chase are not going to have Kelce. And if they don't skip Jamar Chase, then they're probably just going to kind of go elsewhere and not really think about going that way. So there's not going to be a lot of Burrow plus Kelce lines, Burrow plus Adam lines, stuff like that. And so then if we're right and we get the right correlation with Burrow plus Higgins plus Hayden Hurst or whatever, and we hit on that one and Chase, just catches 100 yards but no touchdowns, doesn't really kill us. And then we get the right bet on Kelce or the right bet on Adams or whatever, and we are just leapfrogging all the Jamar Chase T Higgins stacks because we just kind of made the right bet there and got super leveraged on the 8,100 Chase. So, anyways, I don't know. It's kind of a not really a great answer for that, but that's how I like to pivot a little bit and find some leverage. When it comes to cash games, I mean, I don't really think about pivots too much. I just think about trying to like play like the better plays, right? So like just Josh Jacobs is just not like a guy I think that's very reliable, even though he's been getting a lot of carries and stuff this year. So I'm just not too interested in like playing him in cash when the whole field's going to do it. I'd rather just find like a different guy that I think might be better. I haven't looked at it at all. So I don't know if there's better options from Jacobs this week, but this is kind of our first look here, so it's good stuff. Um, and yeah, there we go. All right, we're moving on here, I think. And now we're getting into the fun games. See, we saved the fun for last for all those sticking around past the hour mark. Now we're really going to start cooking here. So we're going to start with Jacksonville at the LA Chargers in our game number 8 of the slate, 8 out of 13. Chargers are favored by 6.5, and the over under is 47. So we finally got over the magic number of 47 here, and we're on to the rest of the games that have a little bit more upside in it from a scoring standpoint. So Jacksonville, I know Zakarian is all on the Travis Etienne hype this week, so let's see if we can support that or maybe go against that. So we've got a pretty healthy split here with James Robinson and ETN. 63% of the snaps for Robinson, only 40% for ETN. Targets pretty well split. Robinson just out rushing ETN like crazy, and he did that 2 weeks in a row basically. So this production here is pretty sticky. It's been the exact same for 2 weeks here, so that's not great. And then we see 1 and 2 last week, 2 and 3 this week. ETN's a couple more receiving yards, a couple more. Actually got negative air yards, so he must have got some passes behind the line of scrimmage and had to make some work of it. The racer just doesn't work when he's getting some negative air yards, so don't pay too much attention there. And then Robinson got the rushing touchdown last week, I think. So yeah, man, I don't know. I guess ETN could be interesting as like a pivot. I don't know if I'm into it. It doesn't. It seems like his usage has been pretty steady. There's not any like sleeper usage stats poking out at us, and the production just hasn't really been great. So until we see some more action out of him, some more rushing attempts, some more targets, I think ETN's a little bit of a stay away. Um, Jumping into the Chargers running back. Speaking of frustrating, I know a lot of Austin fans are frustrated. He promised on his podcast this week. He said the fantasy points are coming, right? The fantasy points are coming. Him and Fournette must be in the same text message group about consoling their fantasy fans. So we'd like to see Eckler's snaps be higher, right? He's got 63 this week, and he had 49 last week. It's just not great. We want more from Eckler. 10 targets is great, but it was obviously at the that last drive there, right? I mean, everybody remembers that from last week. The last couple drives of the game where Eckler took away the Mike Williams rare bottleneck and saved everybody on the Thursday night challenge. So we like those targets, but we don't like that they were in garbage time. And 14 rushing attempts. You just want to see a little bit more from him. We want to see him in like that 18 range. But 50 receiving yards, 9 catches, 39 rushing yards. This stuff's all good from Eckler. This stuff's all good when he's gonna be catching passes. He's gonna be scoring fantasy points. So 18.4 this week, 11.2 last week, and we're just hoping for some touchdowns here to hit. So Eckler looks good. I wouldn't be too worried about Kelly or Michelle. They're just enough to be annoying, but it doesn't really look like they're threatening him too much. So I think we just want to keep betting on Eckler to be a little bit more productive. The Jags wide receivers are fun. Christian Kirk is just kind of crushing it, to be honest with you. I think he's got 3 touchdowns now on the year. Out on the field for every snap, pretty much. Only a 20% target share in week 2, but he just did a lot with it. 6 catches for 78 yards and 2 touchdowns, right? So just a huge week, 25.8 fantasy points after doing 17.7 in week 1. So that's good stuff. And Yeah, I mean all the numbers look good. 44 air yards, turn that into 78 receiving yards. The Whopper is good at 0.46. Obviously, with the 2 touchdowns, the dominator rating is going to be high. I think it's wheels up for Christian Kirk. You can fire him in kind of on that wide receiver 1, wide receiver 2 deal right now. And then looking at some of our other guys, right? So we've got Zay Jones and Marvin Jones. Those are kind of the next two. Um, Marvin Jones is getting more of the air yards this week. Let's see if he did that last week as well. He did have more air yards last week too. So he's probably the leader in the clubhouse of the Jones brothers. They got Tim Jones too. Jeez, every Jones is on the team. I don't even know who Tim Jones is, but he's not doing a whole lot, so we don't got to talk about him. It does look like Zay is being a little bit more efficient, turning those air yards into normal yards, but Jones is getting more of the whopper. So I don't know. I don't have a great lean here. I think both these guys are, liable to kind of do the same thing. They both had pretty much the same amount of fantasy points. I wouldn't really say any of them are starts, but it feels like if the Jaguars start kind of getting into their groove, one of these guys is going to have a good season. Christian Kirk can't just do it all. So we'll kind of see who that is. Evan Ingram's an interesting guy. Um, pretty looks like he's been pretty efficient. The Whopper's pretty good. 7 catches for 46 yards. I mean, what more do you want from a crappy tight end? So, yeah, I think that's pretty good. 4 catches last week. I mean, this is just all you want if you're an Evan Ingram owner. I think I've owned and dropped him on a dynasty team like 4 different times. So maybe it's a good time to go pick him up again if he's still out there. And then Chargers receiver. So tough to really take too much away from it from Keenan Allen. If anybody in the chat wants to help me and let me know if there's any early reports on Allen, whether he's going to be in or out this week. But obviously he didn't play last week, and it was Mike Williams and Josh Palmer show. So we saw Josh Palmer get 75% of snaps in week one, and then with Keenan Allen out, he was on the field for 91% of snaps, which is great. Only saw 13% target share in week one, bumped that up to 18 in week two. Mike Will with the Big Ten targets, and he was just getting peppered early on. And then Gerald Everett too, 10 targets on 50 snaps. That's great. That's really great stuff. Gerald Everett is looking like a late round tight end smash already, and we are barely into the season here. Palmer and Williams both had the touchdowns, but those aren't sticky at all, right? And Gerald Everett 6 catches for 71 yards. I mean that's a thing of beauty there. We do like to see Mike Williams get 134 air yards and a conversion rate of 0.84. That's elite, and a whopper of 0.74. That's really really good. Anybody who was a little bit nervous about him, maybe not being able to fill the alpha role without Keenan Allen. I don't think we have to worry about that too much. If Allen doesn't go again, or if he gets hurt later in the season, I think this is a good game to remember and look at the data here from Mike Will. I think that's about it for this one. We'll jump into oh crap, I gotta get my stuff right here. Uh-oh. Now I'm all out of order on my other sheet. So I tried to talk about some Jamar Chase pivots. Um yeah, I'm all screwed up. Let's do this here. All right, we're back. No, we're not. Okay. Um, so the Jags are popping pretty good. Jags are popping pretty good. Christian Kirk, Marvin Jones both look well. Zay Jones looks good too. Marvin Jones and Zay Jones are both the same price, both pretty much the same projection. We just looked at them. They have like the same exact underlying stats. So it's kind of going to be a coin flip. It looks like Zay's projected for double the ownership. So I think that's a pretty easy pivot to Marvin Jones if that stays true. Evan Ingram looks pretty good at 3,700 too. So I think it's a fun game. I think this is gonna be a fun game. I could see a lot of people playing Chargers and bringing it back with Jags. So I think a little Trevor Lawrence double stack, or maybe a Trevor Lawrence Christian Kirk mini, or single stack with a double Chargers bring back. I think is kind of spicy. Mike Will's projected super well at 6,700. They are assuming, they're assuming Keenan Allen is out right now. ETR is. Um, and I don't know how Williams and Palmer are not projected for more ownership. They're both just completely popping off the sheet here. And so is Gerald Everett. He's looking pretty good too. And Herbert always looks pretty well in the mid sevens there. So I think this is a good game to target. I would probably early lean as Trevor Lawrence single stack with, Gerald Everett and Mike Williams, or Palmer and Mike Williams or something. That's a fun way to approach it and will probably be pretty different. Um, I guess the big question is that game is if Herbert's going to play. So I forget. I saw something about him being. I don't actually remember. I think I saw something about him being on the getting some pads on today or something. So I think he's good to go. Let's check out, see if anybody's got any comments here. Um, Consigliere says he wants to go Flacker, Carter, Chase, and Higgins. It's interesting. I don't know. Consigliere says Kirk and Everett stacks all over FanDuel. How do you already have stacks? Are you already building lineups on Thursday night, man? I think that's too early. I can't get into it yet. I have my like Thursday, Friday fantasy sessions to really get cranking here. Patrick says the Joker's up to 22.1 DK points. Wow, that is big. That is big. Um, Consigliere says he is live. I think here. He needs Brissett and Hunt connections and touchdowns. He's got looks like he's live for a 1500 point, 1500 up top contest. That's good shit. Okay, let's keep cruising here. We're moving on to another fun game, Philly and Washington. I think we've kind of figured that neither of these teams play the greatest defense ever, and they both have pretty good offenses. So looking at Philly, Miles Sanders is just a name that always kind of feels gross when you say it, but Uh, but but he's doing well. 50% of the rushing attempts last week. It's important to account for Jalen Hurts here, right? So I do account for rushing quarterback stats in these, except for the fantasy points, because I think it's just a little bit screwy there, and you want to just see how the skill positions are doing. But when we're looking at rushing attempts, it does account for the quarterback, right? So he's definitely way out ahead from all the running backs, but he is getting you know siphon some carries from Hurts. But 3 targets for Sanders is great. And 80 rushing yards, 3 catches for 6 yards. We want to see a little bit more there, but not too bad. Boston Scott, Kenneth Gainwell didn't do a whole lot. I thought we were in for a little bit more Kenneth Gainwell action, but both those guys didn't really do a whole lot there. It was kind of the Jalen Hurts show for sure on the ground. But any week that could go the Miles Sanders route, right? Or as we saw in week 1, I think did freaking all these guys score a touchdown in week 1? I'm pretty sure they did. Yeah, they did. All 3 scored a touchdown in week 1. Washington. This is a fun backfield for discussions all off season. And Antonio Gibson is doing decent. You'd like to see him play a little bit more snaps. JD McKissick was in for quite a bit there last week. Did see 14 rush attempts. You want to see that a little bit higher from him. And only 28 rushing yards, 2 targets. Not really great. Not really great from Antonio Gibson. I was hoping to see some better underlying stats there, but just not on the field a lot. And just even though he's getting 67% of the snaps, it seems like Washington is going with the pass a little bit more than the run this year. So 14 isn't great either, especially if he's only turning those in 28 yards. So yeah, I mean JD McKissick 29% involvement rate, 16% usage rate. I mean, both these guys you can play as a deep flex, but I'm not super stoked if I've got Gibson on my team right now. Looking at some receiver. So AJ Brown, Quez Watkins was obviously the name to know on Monday night. He kind of came in and snagged the big long touchdown there, and catapulted some DraftKings lineups ahead. But as far as we don't have snap percentage. It's a Monday nighter, but 26% target share for Brown and 23% for Devontae Smith, with a couple on the fringes there for Quez and Pascal. I guess Goddard's in there with 20% as well. So if all those guys if Goddard, Smith, and Brown can stay in those above 20% range, I think that's pretty good. I think that this is an offense that can support 3 weapons. But I'd like to see Quez or Pascal kind of being the third guy and not like both of them getting targets. If I'm an AJ Brown, Devontae Smith, Dallas Goddard owner. Air yards looking good for AJ Brown in week 2. He's over 100. In week 1, he had 94. So that's really good stuff. Always been a really good racer guy and a really good whopper guy. AJ Brown has. He's just a freaking grown man. So seeing that his racer is down this week at 0.62, that means he didn't convert those air yards very well. I think that's a clear bet on talent and a bet on that to bounce back in week 3, because the weighted opportunity was there. He's got a 0.66, which is really elite. And yeah, I mean, everything looks good here on this offense. Devontae Smith, Dallas Goddard, AJ Brown. I think you're starting all of these guys. And like I said, I think Hertz has the ability to pick all these guys up and carry them to some fantasy success. On the Washington receiver side, it's a little different story. So we're seeing Curtis Samuel just get an insane amount of usage, right? So as you can see from kind of the receivers here, we really have three that we care about. Dotson, 100% of snaps. Samuel, 92. McLaurin, 92%. And the targets kind of follow, right? So 9-7-4 there. Dotson with four. Um, and we also have Curtis Samuel and McLaurin both got a rushing attempt. That's interesting. I thought Curtis Samuel was going to step into a little bit of the Debo Samuel light role after we saw a little bit of that pop in week one, but didn't really get back to that in week two. But yeah, big air yards for McLaurin as usual. Cam Sims looks like he just maybe got a big deep ball or something. Nothing really worth worrying about there. And then yeah, I mean, again, my rookie air yards are off. I'll try to get that figured out for next week. But four catches for 59 and a touchdown for Dotson. The guy's a touchdown machine. At two in week one in week two. Same for Samuel, another touchdown. So you just gotta assume that it's a McLaurin week soon here, right? It's been the Samuel and Dotson show here. I guess McLaurin did have a touchdown week one. I forgot Wentz just went off. But yeah, I mean, 0.77 conversion rate for McLaurin, and a 0.69 this week. His Whopper did go up a bit, so I think McLaurin's a fun guy to kind of place a bet on. But again, like if Samuel's out there on the waivers, you got to go pick him up. I think you're starting Samuel every week. He seems like he's had a pretty good role. Two back-to-back weeks over 20 fantasy points, and then Jahan Dotson. I mean, just a great rookie to have. Two back-to-back weeks over 18 or at 18 fantasy points. And then McLaurin, I think, is just kind of a sleeping giant here, 13, 12. Be interesting to see if he goes under owned this week on DraftKings. Let's jump into the sheets right now for DraftKings. Miles Sanders at 5,500 is projecting well at the beginning of the season. I tried to play him in week one at 5,500. I just couldn't get myself to click on it. Sitting here in week three at the same exact price, pretty much the same projection, pretty much the same ownership. I think I'm going to click on Miles Sanders a little bit more. Um, all three receivers look pretty good. Devontae Smith maybe priced a little bit high. Hurts is obviously going to be a popular guy again at 7,600 with one of the highest ceilings on the slate. And then, yeah, our Jahan Dotson keeps bumping up a little bit in price this week. He's at 4,600 and isn't projected super well because we saw that he's not getting the volume, right? He's not getting the same volume that Samuel and McLaurin are. So I think it might be a good week to cool it on the Jahan Dotson train on DraftKings, just because he's been hyper efficient, and we just don't think that's going to stick. But Samuel's looking like a pretty decent cash game option at 5,100, and I mean Terry McLaurin 6,400. We know the ceiling the guy's got. He can blow up for a 25 point, 30 point game, and at 6,400, that's good stuff. So I think Washington Philly is an interesting game to attack. I'm sure Mike and I will be talking about that one on Sunday morning. Keep it moving here. Game number 10. We got four left. Arizona at the Rams. Rams at Arizona. Rams are on the road, favored by 3.5 after the Kyler Murray magic last week. Over under 48.5 this week. Yeah, the Cardinals are just pulled that win out of their ass. I wish Cliff Kingsbury was a sharper dude. But here we go. So we talked about James Conner a little bit earlier. He was on the field for only 18 snaps before he got hurt. Questionable return. Let's see. ETR does think that he's going to play this week. So maybe all this conversation is for nothing. But if he is ruled out, I was hoping we could find some information here on how we could pick between Eno Benjamin and Darrell Williams. But these guys both have about a 30% involvement rate. Both they pretty much split the snaps after Connor left, split the targets, split the carries, split the usage, just right down the middle. We're just gonna have to wait and see. And I don't think we can make any great assumptions there. Rams, tale of 2 weeks kind of thing. Daryl Henderson, 82% of snaps in week one, dropped down to 56% week two. And Cam Akers actually out rushed Hendo with 15 attempts to 10 this week, when last week Henderson had 72% of the team share. So looks like Cam Akers is not completely dust. He's going to have an impact here. But yeah, I mean, mid 40s rushing yards for both these guys. Akers did have two catches. Hendo did have the touchdown. Just a tough backfield to figure out. I think it's going to be one that we want to stay away on. getting into the wide receivers here. So I'm interested to look at Marquise Brown. He's been relatively quiet. We know he's got potential for a big week. Let's flush through this. Let's see if a big week is coming. Week one, 98% of the snaps. Week two, 95% of the snaps. Great. 17% target share week one, 24% target share in week two. Great. 11 targets. We like that. And then let's see where he's at. Let's see where he's at efficiency wise. 101 air yards in week one. Great. Did not convert those very well, which is typical for Marquise Brown. He actually does not. He doesn't have a crazy conversion rate usually. 16.8 A dot and a 0.51 Whopper. That's good, and he did catch a touchdown week one. Touchdowns are noise. Then we move on to week two. 94 air yards. Great. 68 yards receiving, 6 catches. That's great. That's great volume. A dot was down a little bit, just because freaking Arizona's just all over the board, and they just can't get their offense figured out. So we want to see his A dot stay a little bit higher. If he's got an A dot back like he did in week one of 16.8, and that conversion rate keeps creeping up, and he's got a Whopper of 0.63. I mean, AJ Brown time is coming, people. It is coming, and it could be this week against the Rams. Sorry, AJ Brown. I don't know why I said that. Marquise Brown. I like it. I like Marquise Brown this week. Just some of the underlying metrics are there. If it's not this week, it's going to happen soon. And then the other guy that's worth talking about is Dortch, right? And I also want to talk about Zach Ertz too, because he's got some really good stats too. 11 targets for Zach Ertz. Dortch, AJ Green had 7, but the guy just like couldn't catch a pass, man. He couldn't catch it. He's got 3 catches. Like, come on, dude. Dortch, four targets, 4 catches, and 8 catches for Ertz. And Ertz is getting some red zone looks too. So I think Ertz is a really interesting play. I think he might be a fun one on DraftKings, depending his price. Um, and Dortch has just been hyper efficient. 21 air yards for 55 receiving yards. I thought that was not the greatest chalk to play in on DraftKings last week, and he ended up getting there, which was good for my cash team, but I didn't play him at all in tournaments. Um, but Zach Ertz, I do like a lot. He's probably going to go under the radar. Nobody wants to click on Zach Ertz, but he's got really good stats here to start the season. Moving down to the Rams, I mean, we don't need to talk about Cooper Kupp. The dude is just a machine. He's going to score 25 fantasy points a week. This year, he started off with a 31.8 and a 33.8. I mean, come on. The guy's an animal. We just don't need to talk about him at all. Allen Robinson, though, we did see a bounce back. So same amount of snaps, roughly, and did get a better target share. 5 targets this week compared to like one, I think, 1 or 2 in week one. Tyler Higbee, big 9 targets as well. So that's good to see for the tight end there. And then getting into Robinson, I mean, 39 air yards isn't great, 16% share. The conversion rate is, all right. Not really a whole lot to take away from that with that mid-tier range. That's just a couple yards after the catch that get into it. I mean, the weighted opportunity rate for Cup 0.92 is just next level elite. And I don't see that going away anytime soon. So like Skoronek's in there being a pain in the ass for Robinson, and so is Higbee, and so are the running backs too. So, I mean, he did all right. He caught the touchdown. Robinson did this week, but I think he's going to be kind of a touchdown dependent guy. Whereas Higbee, I don't know, he just got almost double the passes that Robinson caught this week. So. I don't know. I'm not sold on Robinson yet. I wouldn't be super eager to fire him in as like a wide receiver 2 or something like that. Higbee, I think you can definitely start every week in your lineup if you have them. James Conner, James Conner's looking good if he plays 6,200. I kind of hope he keeps the Q tag going, and then nobody plays him because in week one he did have really workhorse like usage, so he could be a fun guy to fire up if nobody's on him. Zach Ertz looked pretty good at 4,600, and Marquise Brown at 6,000 is just like middle of the pack, not really projecting too well. But we just talked through his usage. We talked through the ceiling that we know he has. I like him a lot. Henderson and Akers are eating into each other's projection. I wouldn't play either of them. Kupp's just out of this world, but at 9,900, like we just talked through Devontae Adams, 8,400, Cooper Kupp, 9,900. I don't know. That's a pretty big gap. Obviously, Kupp's banked back-to-back 30-point weeks, and Devontae did it out last week. But I don't know. It's going to be tough to see if that pricing works this week. Higby is looking like right in that sweet spot on my sheets, kind of blues across the board. So I like Higbee at 4,500 this week. And yeah, Robinson doesn't project too well, and I think he got a price hike. So I'd probably stay away there, just like we talked about it. Here we go. Who's live? We got some people that are sweating here. DJ Local said he's live too. Needs Trubisky and Deontay. Okay. Uh, Milo says you almost had it, DJ. Is that Johnson? And then DJ Local says he's got the fourth. Let's take a little cruise through here. So we still got Chubb as the far and away rushing favorite, right? Njoku with 8, Cooper's catching him with 6, and Johnson's got 6. So this one's far from over. We know what happens in fourth quarters of Thursday games for receptions. And then it looks like our guy Denzel Ward's at 5. Miles Garrett's at 2. So Miles Garrett's probably out of the running. And then Sutton's got 4. Hayward's got 4. Minka's got 2. Edmonds has 2. Levi Walls has 1. So, I mean, barring like a huge quarter from Minka, it does seem like it's going to be Hayward, Sutton, or Denzel Ward here with our tackles. So that could be interesting. I'm really glad the all day is fixed. They wanted us to buy Minka's people are gonna get a bad run out here. Thomas says Ward is tied with Sutton. Good call. I don't see Sutton with on my app. He doesn't have an assist. He only has 4 tackles. Oh, no, he's got 5. Yep, must have just gotten the tackle. So Sutton's live. Cool, love it. All right, we're keeping firing here. A couple games left. Looked like it just this thing should line up right at the end of the ball game. So that's good stuff. We are into Indy at the Chiefs. Oh, sorry. I always just say like whatever I think, and then I click on my phone. I see what they're actually at. Chiefs at Colts this week. Chiefs are favored on the road by 5.5, and the over under is 50.5. I don't know about you guys, but Colts didn't score a point last week, so 50.5. It seems like the Chiefs are going to have to get about 75% of those points. I don't know about that. I do not know about that. That seems a little steep. That seems like an early under bet. But what do I know? I don't pride myself on lines and totals that much. Okay, so we're firing here. We Jonathan Taylor dudded out last week. Just really didn't get many fantasy points at all. 7.3. I think that was like the first week he hasn't been a top 30 running back like in his career or whatever. Wouldn't be too worried about it there. We're firing up him. Naheem Hines, not a huge threat right now. Wouldn't really be starting Hines. Even when they were trailing the whole game, he just didn't get a whole lot of action. KC running backs. Um, Kind of ugly, kind of ugly. 44% for CEH, 47% for McKinnon. It's an interesting game flow because they were kind of trailing a little bit against the Chargers, and they had to come storming back there in the third. So that's probably leads to some of that McKinnon. But even in week one, it was a 40% split with a little bit of more Isaiah Pacheco. We can see Isaiah Pacheco only 5 snaps this week, so that was purely a garbage time kind of deal. I do like to see the involvement from Clyde Edwards-Helaire at 48%. So when he's on the field, 4 targets, 8 rushes. Doesn't seem like a lot, but 8 rushes is pretty good for the Chiefs. And that's good. But it's just not like bell cow, like knock your socks off stuff. But what we do like from Clyde is 4 catches, 44 yards, and 74 rushing yards. So that's good stuff. And then McKinnon got that little passing touchdown there. So I mean, overall, if you're a Clyde Edwards-Helaire drafter, you're happy right now. 22 points in week one, 16 in week two. This is why you drafted the running back on the Chiefs, right? So I think he's fine to keep firing up. I wouldn't really be starting McKinnon, but I think he's an interesting guy to keep on your bench. Let's take a look at. Let's see. Is there anything worth talking about for the Titans? Travis Kelce's just doing Travis Kelce things. I just don't think we need to talk about Kelsey too much, but we do need to dig in these damn receivers and figure out who's doing what, when, where, why, how. So it's MVS and Juju for most of the routes. Both of them are over 70%. Then it's Mecole Hardman. Then it's Justin Watson. Pretty much the exact same snap breakout in week one as there was in week two. And then the targets are pretty spread out too. Juju only had three. That's a bummer. Mecole Hardman with four and MVS with seven, but I don't really remember MVS doing anything. Yeah, so MVS turned seven targets into two catches, three catches for Hardman, two catches for Watson, and then five for Kelsey. Um, so and then yeah, Juju had four air yards. I mean, that's just horrible. Like you're in you're with Patrick Mahomes, dude. Are you just dust or what? MVS 74 air yards, but just really not converting those, not catching those passes. 13 receiving yards, and then Mecole Hardman's actually been kind of the most consistent wide receiver here, which is kind of funny. And then Justin Watson obviously got the big touchdown, big long touchdown, but I don't think that's really anything to count on. So Juju put up 4 points. MBS put up three. Hardman put up seven. Kelsey put up 10. And the Chiefs won the game. It just shows you how good Patrick Mahomes is. Doesn't really need the big weapons to go off. He just scores the points. Indy receivers. So without Michael Pittman, I always like to, it's good to get a stud out early, right? Because hopefully Pittman's back this week and it's nothing too crazy. But these situations happen throughout the year where a guy goes down and we're like, oh shit, like who's going to be stepping into that role? A lot of people were thinking it was going to be Paris Campbell on the field for 86% of the snaps, saw two targets out there running wind sprints. Ashton Doolin, 64% of the snaps, seven targets. And even Desmond Patton, only 24 snaps, but saw six targets. All these guys were better than Paris Hilton. Or Paris Hilton, nice. Paris Campbell in week two. Jumping into some of the metrics here. Again, 20 air yards for Campbell, Patman, and Doolin, both in the 80 range. So that's good. Doolin was actually pretty good conversion right there, turning 81 air yards into 79 receiving yards. And those guys dominated the Whopper also. So yeah, there we go. It's Ashton Doolin and Desmond Patton when Michael Pittman's out. This Colts tight end just doesn't look great. Mo Alley Cox, Kylan Granson, coin flip, would stay away from him. Let's see if this game's popping for us here. Got a 50.5 point total, but just spread out production. Jonathan Taylor, 9,000, comes down from 9,900 last week after a bad week. So that could be a pretty good bounce back spot for him. Could be a pretty good price tag. Michael Pittman, 6,900. He's probably going to be pretty popular if he's deemed fully healthy. And then the rest of these guys are just kind of mush altogether and under 4,000. So I would probably stay away from all those guys. On the Chiefs side, the things are popping. Things are popping on the sheets, but not in the ownership, and that's what we like to hear. That's what we like to see. Mahomes, 7,900, a little bit expensive, but that's all right. He's Mahomes. Kelsey at 7,900 as well. He's super expensive. I do not envision a lot of people playing Kelsey. So if you can find some pivots, if you can fit Kelsey into Jamar Chase or Devontae Adams spots that they would normally be in, I think that's a pretty good spot for Kelsey. Um, and then Juju and MVS are projecting well. Their prices keep lowering. CH looks decent too. So it doesn't look like a lot of people are going to play the Chiefs. Maybe this changes. Doesn't look like a lot of people are going to play this game at all. I think maybe everybody's gut feeling is 50.5 seems high, but I mean, we always want to bet on Vegas being more right than we are. So I don't know. I think that one's decent. Um, we're moving on. We're moving on into game number 12. Detroit at Minnesota. Minnesota's favorite at home by 5.5, and the over/under is 52. Thomas says Hayward could back into this challenge, and that would be great for my backs because I did buy a Hayward uh, before the game. So this is gonna be fun. I feel like we're gonna get to the end of the game here just as we get done with the workload report. Um, okay, Detroit running backs. DeAndre Swift's got the explosion, but he's a little bit banged up, so he's only on the field for 50% of the snaps. He was on the field for 67 in week one. So we'll see if he gets back to that in week three. But honestly, he was able to get there with 16.7 fantasy points on only 50% snaps. You love it. You love it. You love it. Swift is a must play. Jamal Williams did get 50% of the attempts this week with 12 attempts. But again, I think that's just because Swift was banged up. But I mean, Jamal is just a great guy. Great guy to start in the flex. We saw him get 2 goal line touchdowns last week. We saw him take the lead role this week in rushing attempts when Swift was a little banged up. Just a really reliable guy to have. And if Swift ever misses a week, whew, wheels up for Williams. Keep him on your bench if you got him. You might even be playing. I think that's about it we need to talk about on the running backs there. Minnesota running backs. Dalvin Cook is just kind of in the Derrick Henry camp of mega disappointment to start the season. 13.8 points in week one, 7.6 in week two. We don't have usage or we don't have snaps for Monday night yet, like I was saying. I did see 6 targets, which is good from Dalvin, but he only got 6 rush attempts. And a lot of that was because Minnesota was trailing pretty heavy to Philly. But you'd like to think that Dalvin would be involved a little bit more in the passing game. I mean, 6 targets, I guess, is pretty good. Um, but yeah, when they're in a negative game script, it's not going to be. This isn't the Zimmer show where we just still run the ball no matter what. 4 catches for 19 yards from Dalvin, 3 for 6 from Madison, just enough to be annoying. And just 17 rushing yards for Dalvin. Man, it's just a bummer. I mean, it seems like it's fine. You're obviously gonna keep playing Dalvin, but a lot of people had high hopes on Dalvin this new offense, and it does not look like that is coming to fruition here. Big Irv Smith bounce back week. Only played 31% of the snaps after coming off an injury in the offseason in week one. I think that jumped up quite a bit this week, and he had 8 targets. And he caught a touchdown. I think he had like, what do you have here? 5 catches, 36 yards, and a touchdown. So that's good from Irv. He's going to be popular this week on DraftKings, I bet. Um, Justin Jefferson, big 12 targets. And Adam Thielen, who I had on DraftKings team on Monday night that did really well, finished in the top 10 in a couple of big tourneys. He did nothing for the first 3 quarters, and he finally came on in the fourth. But 12 targets for Jefferson and only 6 catches. Kirk was just kind of throwing up freaking ducks, and a lot of defenders were catching them. So I wouldn't be too worried about that if you're a Jefferson guy. I think this is a good bounce back week against the Lions, who we know have a bad offense. But yeah, I mean, we saw so last week the conversion rate for Jefferson and Thielen 1.56, 1.33. Not too many air yards for Thielen, so maybe that one's some noise, but 118 for Jefferson, and we know he just crushed the Packers. This week, a lot of air yards, 93 and 80 for these guys, but they just didn't convert them very well. So I'm leaning on them being more like what they did in week one with their conversion than what they did in week two for the rest of the season. And so if Kirk keeps firing it to them, these guys should be in for a big week, and we know receivers are able to put up points against the Lions. Speaking of putting up points, Amon-Ra St. Brown is just looking like the steal of the year so far out of the gates. Put up a big 39.4 PPR points in week two and 20.4 in week one. I mean, like the kid is off to a hell of a year here. DJ Chark's running wind sprints. Didn't even catch a pass in week two. Amon-Ra St. Brown, 85% of snaps, 12 targets, 35% target share. It's elite. TJ Hawkinson, 21% target share, but just never seems to do anything with it. So in week one, Amon-Ra had 65 air yards, 8 catches, conversion rate of 0.98. DJ Chark, 124 air yards, did not convert, 0.42. Fast forward to week two, Amon-Ra, 86 air yards, again, great conversion rate, gets up to 116 receiving yards. DJ Chark, 87 air yards, wind sprints, doesn't catch any of them. That's a bummer. But to me, what do you have in week one? 124 air yards in week one, 87 air yards in week two. They're trying to get him the ball. This is, I think, your classic buy low on DJ Chark after a stinker. Um, he could even be a pivot off of Amon-Ra this week if you're really into it. Uh, we'll see. We'll see kind of what it says here. Let's see what we're looking at on DraftKings. We just talked about how we like DJ Chark 5,100. That's a great. That just seems a little high for him actually. I was kind of hoping he'd be under. I got him confused at Josh Reynolds 4,500. 5,100 is a little bit high. Amon-Ra 7,200, just looking like a stud. Looking blues across the board for me on my sheet, which is always good. DeAndre Swift at 7,200 looks like a great play. He's not projecting a ton of ownership. And TJ Hawkinson's looking to likely to be a really chalky tight end. So I'd probably stay away from him in tournaments, but he might be a pretty good cash option. Dalvin Cook, 7,900. I mean, this is just kind of there's not like a whole lot of underlying stuff that we looked at that says that's going to be good, but we're just kind of betting on his talent there. 7,900 does just feel a little bit steep for a guy who really hasn't shown us much to start the year, though. But he's projecting to be pretty popular this week. Jefferson's Blues across the board at 9,300. I think this game's just going to shoot out. Irv Smith's probably going to be the most popular tight end on the slate. Cousins is projecting really well. Goff's projecting really well, really well. This is going to be a fun game to try to figure out and get right. I think there's a lot of angles to approach it. So this is going to be one I'm going to be focusing on for sure. Blaze says Cooper is going to tie it with Njoku. Okay, we're getting into it here. Oh, we got a touchdown. I missed a touchdown. Who scored? Chubb. Chubb with the 1 yarder. Anybody challenging for the rushing, or is it still? Yeah, it's still just Chubb, huh? 36. Doesn't look like that's gonna happen. Najee Harris is just, averages his 4 yards a carry, and that's all he gets. Johnson with 6 catches. Cooper with 7, and Njoku with 8. So that's interesting. And did we get any touch there? Or sorry, did we get I think we're just. Oh, Fitzpatrick's got 4. Fitzpatrick is up to 4 tackles. Denzel's at 5. A lot of things getting tight here. People are getting nervous. Hayward, what's Hayward at? Hayward's at 5 also, man. So a lot of guys are live here. And it looks like I'm behind because people are freaking out about Njoku. Are people winning money? Are people winning money because of Njoku? Um, that looks big. Looks like he just did something. Okay. Let's keep firing. Let's keep firing. We got last game. We are at our last game. You love it. You love to see it. Never thought we'd get there. Okay. Buffalo at Miami. Buffalo's favored by 5 on the road. Total is 52.5. Let's start with the Buffalo running backs. Um, don't have snaps. Didn't get a lot of targets. Singletary got 4. James Cook actually led the way in attempts, but we know why, right? That was garbage time. I mean, he was playing with Case Keenum most of the fourth quarter there and even into the third. So not a lot we can take away there. Really, probably after seeing that, I don't really think it's worth looking at Bucks running backs anymore. Miami running backs are a little bit of a mess. Chase Edmonds, 63% of snaps in week 1, dropped down to 51% in week 2. And then Mostert went from 23% of the attempts in week 1, jumped that up to 65% of the attempts in week 2. 11 touches for Mostert, 5 for Chase Edmonds. They both had 3 targets. So that's not great. That smells like a pretty much a committee, if you ask me. 3 catches for Mostert, 28 yards, 1 for 8 for Edmonds, 51 yards on the ground for Mostert, 33 for Edmonds. Yeah, that's a bummer. Yeah, we'll see. I mean, they just passed a ton. I mean, we're bearing the lead here by not even talking about the 2 guys who both scored 40 points here in Waddle and Hill. But uh, it'll be interesting to see. I mean, it just seems like these Dolphins are going to be passing a lot, and when they got Waddle and Hill, why wouldn't you? Um, but yeah, I mean, I just think that's a stay away on the running backs right now. It's looking like a full on committee for sure. Okay, we are looking at the wide receivers here. So Waddle and Hill both went off. We know that. 19 targets for Waddle, 13 for Hill. That's bonkers. But they're also like the only guys getting targeted on this team, which is really great. We've seen this in the past, like with the Vikings, where it's just Thielen and Jefferson just getting hammered with targets. This year they're getting spread out a little bit more. But we've seen these kinds of things in the past, and when we see it, we don't want to just think that it's like, oh, one big week. Like we want to try to lean into this stuff. So I think you can definitely go back to the well with Waddle and Hill this week. You got to be crafty about how you do it. You got to think through how your lineup is going to be different than others. But you can absolutely play another Tua Waddle and Hill stack. Bring him back a Bill. I mean, geez, that's just pure. That is pure right there. Let's see if there's anything crazy with Waddle and Hill that may make it seem like it's a little bit of an aberration. 109 air yards for Hill, 52 for Waddle. Both of them converted really well in week 1. Both of them had really good Whopper ratings. Tyreek with elite point 0.9 in week one. Fast forward to week two, 180, 138. I mean, these are just crazy air yards. They both, converted crazy well. The Whoppers there. I mean, nothing says that these guys are on any sort of trajectory down. The ADOTs are even like 10, 9, 9, 10. I mean, it's just crazy. This is just elite wide receiver usage, and I think these guys are just freaking wheels up for the rest of the season. There's like sometimes you get a little nervous if there's like an 8 out of like 26. If a guy catches 190 yards and he has an 8 out of 10 and he's got 19 targets, I mean, like it's just that is elite stuff. So I think you're firing these guys up every single week. They're both. I mean, Hill is definitely wide receiver one. Waddle we can see is knocking on the door. Really love the Dolphins here. Going up to the Bills. I mean, with Gabe Davis out, Jake Kummerow was actually on the field quite a bit. I know we don't have the snaps here, but he did out snap McKenzie and Crowder. They both stayed in the slot. But then Stephon Diggs just dominated 14 targets, 12 catches, 140 yards, three tutties. Biggest fantasy output of the season, 44.8 so far. 137 air yards. Turn those into 148 through the air. I mean, just beautiful stuff. 0.93 Whopper. That's great. That's really good stuff. Let's see what he did last week when Gabe Davis was there. 0.74 Whopper with a touchdown. I mean, that's really good. 44% air yards. Yeah. Yep, Diggs is a first round pick for sure. Well done. Dawson Knox, I did want to check on him. Did jump up to 5 targets in week two, which is good after kind of just being a blocker in week one. 4 catches, 41 yards. Nothing too crazy there. I like the Whopper though, point 0.3. Yeah, I think Knox is just a guy that's going to fall into some touchdowns just because he's on the Bills. I think he's fine to start in fantasy. And hopefully the Bills just get into a competitive game here. It could be as early as this week with the Dolphins. I'm assuming this is going to be an incredibly owned game on DraftKings, and now that I'm looking on the sheets, it is not at all. Diggs is going to be popular at 7,700. I mean, that's just way too cheap for Diggs. We just looked at how crazy he's been. Allen's going to be popular at 8,200. So nobody's going to play Gabe Davis, it looks like, coming off an injury, so he's fun. Um, McKenzie and Crowder, I think, are on the field enough to really bite into each other. I could see Dawson Knox. I could see this being a two touchdown Dawson Knox week at 4,100. That feels fun. We know the ceiling's there. Edmonds and Mostert are projecting like they're in a committee, and we just looked at all the data and it supported that. So I would agree there. Tyreek and Waddle, I mean, they're up in price a little bit, but not too much. And they're both projecting really well, and they're both not gonna. They're not. They're knocking on the door to like 10% ownership, which I don't think is crazy. And then two at 6,100. I mean, the guy just passed for 462 yards and 6 touchdowns, so we know what he can do. Yeah, I'm actually surprised this game wasn't a little bit more targeted. So it does look like the most popular game of the week is going to be Detroit, Minnesota. Um, and then probably followed by Rams and Cardinals, it looks like. And then Washington, Philly. And then actually Chargers, Jacksonville. And then it's going to be Buffalo, Miami. So that just like doesn't feel right to me. Like the after last week, seeing what happened with both of these teams, it seems like more people are going to go there. So we'll be interesting to see where ownership kind of shakes out there. But yeah, I think that about does it, people. Um, we'll hang out here. We'll hang out and we'll watch the game together. I don't have anything better to do. We got 5 minutes left. Feel free to fire in some questions. I know we just went through a lot. I was trying this out for the first time tonight. Um, I think it was good. I think we could probably get a little bit more efficient with it. I don't need to talk about every player in the league, but hopefully that was valuable. Hopefully you got some, peek behind the curtain on how to use the workload report a little bit. I know it's looks pretty intimidating. There's a lot of stats, a lot of numbers there. What do they all mean? How do we use them? What's fake? What's real? So hopefully that helped a little bit. And then I think, using that stuff to think about how it's going to work for your lineups on um, in season long and in your dynasty leagues and stuff like that. And then, then taking through some of the stuff that we see with the usage and the opportunity and stuff like that, and seeing that on the, comparing that to ownership and stuff on DraftKings, I think is super important. So it's a really good exercise. I like doing it every week. I do it whether I'm on on a stream like this or whether I'm just sitting in front of my computer going through every game because it really helps kind of get you set up for what the week's looking like ahead, and kind of go through some of the underlying stats and see kind of what's real and what's fake here. So let's see what we got here. Thomas is saying, "What's Njoku spiking to?" Mm, that's a good point. If tackles are, so we could pull up. Let's pull up some Momentum Labs NFL sheets. Um, we'll get this popping here. You talked about bottlenecks, and that makes me want to bring up the primetime games sheet. So let's get zoomed in here. This is our Thursday nighter. So yeah, as you said, if a lot of these defensive guys tie, right? We've got Sutton, Ward, Minka, and Hayward, I think, all tied, right? Um, so that's like 11,000 moments there that can be used. We've got Chubb with the longest run at 13,000. We've got a ton of TSDs, so that's not anything to worry about. So Njoku is the clear bottleneck at 6,100. So I agree with you there. And yeah, I mean, I think that's a pretty good. I think did I buy two Njokus before the game? That would be pretty sick. I think I did. I think I might have. So yeah, I mean, he seems like he's in Gabe Davis zone. But again, Gabe Davis zone from the beginning of the year was like, week number one. Who the hell knows what anybody's thinking? So maybe that's a little bit inflated, but it does seem like Njoku could get into the maybe 40 or 50 range. I just have one. Must have bought another one of somebody else. Um, Hayward is taking it. No way. I have his rare. It'll probably get bought soon here. Maybe I should go delist that. Don't screw me here, Thomas. Is it going to be Hayward for sure? He's got 7 tackles with 4 minutes to go. 7 tackles. Sutton has 5. Fitzpatrick has 4. Oh man, he does. It is going to be him, huh? Oh, and it got bought. Damn it. It got bought. Well, that's a bummer. I was hoping to get like a quick flip out of Hayward. Like 107, Sulfur, 149. Now he's up to freaking 300. Insane. Oh well. You win some, you lose some. Looks like we're gonna lose that one. Um, Drew says, "Nice job. Cheers. Thanks, man. Appreciate it." Patrick should trim down some of the games. Yeah, that's true. Definitely true. I do think it's valuable going through them all, but I'm sure I could talk less about some of the guys we don't really care about that much. Sam says, Daryl or Eno, if no James Conner. I think we just talked through that. It just looks like a real coin flip right now if both those guys are in. So or if Connor's out. So I don't know. I think you're just taking guesses there. Cam Hayward to the moon. Consigliere said last week I told Pete, what about Lamar with Tyreek Waddle? Didn't play it. Come on. And then there we go. Pitt back on offense. Uh, hmm. Yeah. So I think everything's locked in then, right? We have everybody locked in here. Um, did Deontay Johnson do anything? 6 catches. Njoku's got 9. Alrighty, people. I think we're gonna call it there. Thanks for hopping in. Thanks for joining us, or joining me, I guess. And we'll keep doing this every Thursday. Maybe we'll try to get it a little bit more efficient. We'll try to trim it down a little bit. Feel free to hit me with DMs or comments or anything on what I could do to make this better. If I could help explain some more stuff in the sheets, stuff like that. But yeah, cheers, guys.